Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. This episode's featured author is Mark Matteson. Mark Matteson is an international speaker and the author of the best-selling book, Freedom from Fear, which has sold over 200,000 copies worldwide. He has written 8 books and 7 ebooks. He is one of those rare professionals who can say he is a speaker, consultant, podcaster, publisher, and author, and mean it. He has attracted clients like Microsoft, Honda, Peterbilt, Kenworth, Fujitsu, Daikin, Mitsubishi, T-Mobile, John Deere, ConocoPhillips, Aflac, Honeywell, and other Fortune 100 companies on 3 continents. He has been called an edutainer, an oracle of optimism, a superlative street scholar, and an intense idea reporter. Mark travels 250 days a year around the globe, delivering 75 keynotes, seminars, and workshops a year. Mark is a gifted storyteller using self-effacing humor, high levels of interaction, and powerful and proven business principles to inspire audiences to the highest levels of productivity and profit. Mark leaves audiences wanting more. He began his career in HVAC in 1976. He has been married to Debbie for 43 years and has 3 grown sons and 4 grandchildren. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Thank you, Ryan, for sharing these fun, insightful, and interesting author interviews with us. My name is BJ with Pop Mindset, and I have a gift for each of you. One of the number 1 keys for your success and mine is reaching new people. The easiest way to do that is when you really understand what flock that person flies with. So I would love to invite you to hop on over to the website popmindset.com. Look under the free resources for the free personality profile quiz so you can understand just a little bit more about what flock you fly with and how to speak the language of your prospect, your coworker, your family, and your clients. Thanks again, Ryan. Looking forward to many more author interviews.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back again to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, I have Mark Matteson. Mark, how are you today?
Good as gold, right as rain, cool as a cucumber.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. So today we're here to talk about not just, you have one book, but you have you have a huge collection under your belt. So we're gonna probably dabble a little bit in quite a few things. But what's the book we're primarily promoting today?
My newest one. It's entitled As We Think, So We Become, 22 Ways to Change Your Thinking in Your Life to Live Your Best Life Right Now.
So is it what genre of a self-help, genre of leadership, just changing?
It would be considered self-help. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what inspired you to write this one? I mean, I know you have a lot under your belt. We'll get to that, but what inspired you to get this one going?
Well, it was originally from the quote from Earl Nightingale, "We become what we think about. It's the strangest secret in the world." And Earl's one of my mentors. I discovered him in 1989, the year he died, actually. He convinced me that the strangest secret in the world is truly what we become what we think about.
Mental power is incredible. We go where we look, as I have heard a good friend of mine say. We go where we look. So what kind of feedback or what kind of lessons are there in this particular book?
Well, I'll just read you the back cover. And packed with facts, examples, and simple tips for taking control of your life. Roy Newey, author of Ready, Set, Grow. Set life-defining goals, manage anger and other extreme emotions, stretch your mind and improve your thinking, improve your outlook to improve your circumstances, redefine your number 1 client, seize the day, control your time, see opportunities where others see fear, and conquer fear once and for all. 22 short, easy-to-read chapters.
Okay, great. So really a very positive message through the entire book, it sounds like.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like how the pedestal on which you live your life on, or that foundation is positivity and outlook.
I'd like to believe that's true. I'm a recovering pessimist.
Yeah.
You know, the irony about me writing 8 books is I flunked high school English and I have a year of junior college.
Hey.
So, a
Well, I
solid year. I
mean,
had a 3.0 in college, blood alcohol level.
oh boy, that's a little different story. Well, look at Albert Einstein. He didn't. I think he failed. High school math, and he went on to do all sorts of crazy stuff, discover some cool stuff. So, I mean, really, school is important, but learning continually is what we really have to do through our lives. So,
Yeah,
that
that's
is
really true.
That is excellent. So now I know this. We're talking about this book. So, but I was reading through your bio. Freedom from Fear was written originally, one of the first books you wrote, that jump started your author career and other career path as well. Can you go into that for just a little bit of time for us?
Sure. So the backstory is I had set a goal to write a book. That was the goal, write a book. And about 6 months later, I looked at that goal every day. I manifested, I visualized, and out of the blue, a woman contacted me from the University of Washington, and they paid me $3,000 to write a book called Effective Communication. And let's see, 9 people read it. No, wait, 10, my mother. It had a small audience. And I was doing a speaking gig in San Diego in 2000. And unfortunately, I didn't own the rights to the book, so I could sell the audio cassettes, but I couldn't sell the book. And it won an award for academic excellence, but that didn't matter because I didn't own the rights.
Oh.
And afterwards, a gentleman, a CFO of a large company, said, "Hey, I'd like to have you speak to our company. Is what's on this audio program the same as what you talked about?" I said, "No, not at all." He went, "Oh, okay. That's all right. I'll buy it anyway." So he gave me $49, and I called him a week later, and he was in his car. And he goes, "Hold on, let me turn down the stereo." And so he said, "I was just listening to your audiobook." I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "What'd you like the most about it?" He said, "I can turn you off." So, and then I realized I'd set a terrible goal, Ryan. Write a book was a bad goal. What I really wanted was a best-selling book. So I wrote a new goal.
Yes.
And I read every best-selling book I could find. I started asking a really simple question: what defines a best-selling book? What are the causes of that success? Which is a question I've been asking myself most of my life. And so I came to the conclusion there were 6 simple things that if I did those 6 things, I'd have a pretty good chance of writing a bestseller. So I did all 6 things. Great title, great cover, a fable, written in common everyday language, a twist at the end, right? So I was done with it. I was really happy. I wrote it in 30 days. And I sent it to a mentor of mine, Charlie Tremendous Jones. And he called me 2 weeks later and he said, "If you can write another book like this, you won't need to speak anymore." And I said, "Really?" He said, "I'd like to publish it." And I said, "You're a publisher?" He was this famous speaker and author, and I didn't know he had a publishing company. He said, "What do you think Executive Books is, an underwear store?" So he said, I'd like to publish it. And I said, "Oh, okay. How does it work?" He said, "I'm going to print 10,000 copies and give you 1,000 to sell in the back of the room." And I said, "The back of what room?" He said, "Where you speak." And I went, "Oh, right. So that was the beginning. And the book just took off. It sold a couple 100,000 copies, been translated into 10 languages, which is just nuts. It was crazy to me.
Yeah, that's very impressive, by the way. Just I'm sure you already know that and you've been told that, but just very impressive.
Thanks.
So, yeah, no problem. So then that was your first book. When was that written?
2000.
2000. Okay. Oh my gosh. Wow. And then you got a new book coming out here, Think So We Become. And now do they all kind of mesh together? They have similar messages, or is it different not say genres, but different topics on each one?
Well, there's a different theme to almost every one. I have 3 of them in that Freedom from Fear kind of bundle, right? Freedom from Fear, Freedom for Forever, and a Simple Choice, and Freedom from Fat.
Okay.
And the Freedom from Fat book was written after I lost 50 pounds and 10 inches off my waist. And I wrote an article about what I'd done, and it got a tremendous response. So I thought, okay, maybe more people are interested in losing weight and keeping it off. And so I wrote Freedom from Fat. But the other books, it's about time, straight up self-help book. Old Light Through New Windows, I wrote for my grandkids.
Yeah.
And the new one, they're all essentially self-help nonfiction.
Okay. Now, and you mentioned earlier during this whole beginning of your career, you started as a speaker also. So
I did.
Can you chat about that too?
Absolutely. A mentor of mine, a very famous speaker, I asked him, why have a book? And he said, well, your book is your talk and your talk is your book. And going back to the story about the gentleman, the CFO. And so I realized freedom from fear were all the things that I was talking about when I was speaking. And so now those two are aligned. And so whenever an aspiring speaker reaches out to me and says, I want to become a speaker, I say the first thing you need to do is write a book and make sure that the book that you write covers all the topics that you cover when you speak.
Yes.
So if your goal is to teach somebody how to be financially independent, you need to write a book about that. If that's what your talk is that your seminars, your workshops, your keynotes.
Where have you spoken to?
All over the world, actually.
Amazing.
I've spoken in 48 states. People always ask me, what are the 2 states you haven't spoken in? Wyoming and New Hampshire.
Oh, God, you got to get those.
I'm sorry. Wyoming and Maine. Sorry. I've spoken in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And I've spoken on 3 continents and,
wow. Just great venues. Awesome. It's all just separate companies, all just, solo, people just come to see you by themselves, or are companies hiring you to?
It's primarily corporations.
Okay.
Brian.
Okay.
And they're almost always closed events. People ask me why aren't I doing open events? And it's because I'm so busy speaking. I do about 75 talks a year that I just don't have time to put together open kind of public events.
Would that be something in the future you'd want to explore?
Yeah, when I'm about 80, I think once I'm about 80 or 85, I think I'm going to have people come to me. But for now, like next week, I'm in Chicago.
Wow.
And then I'm in Houston. And then, let's see, I'm going somewhere else. I have to look. But yeah.
Gosh. Wow. That's incredible. And so a lot of good, positive feedback from your talks and everything?
Yeah, I'm primarily a speaker first and an author second.
Okay.
The writing kind of came as a result. It turns out that I'm a situational extrovert, or what's called an ambivert. Like I'd rather be reading and writing than almost anything else. But when it's time for me to step on a stage or to hit the road, I become an extrovert.
Okay. That's interesting. We've always, the family and I have always had this theory of introverts with extroverted tendencies, which is what I am. I am one who I teach for a living. So getting up in front of people, talking, having to be, excited about something, maybe a topic that's terribly boring, which a couple of them are, that I teach at least. And but in an introvert, I get my energy from being alone and getting my, filling my batteries back up. Whereas, other people are extroverts with introverted tendencies. They get fueled by being around people, but they still have those desires to be by themselves and enjoy some alone time. So it's interesting how people kind of switch it up as they progress through their careers or just life in general.
Yeah, typically on my way home, I'll put on my headphones and read a book.
Yeah.
When I'm on the airplane. I mean, that changes a little bit every once in a while. I'll talk to my seatmate, but for the most part,
you try to focus in on yourself.
Yeah, I'm kind of all talked out usually by the
second
or third day.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's very exhausting. People wouldn't think that talking a lot would be exhausting, but it's a lot of mental work. It's a lot of mental work you're doing. You're remembering stories, you're a storyteller. You're a storyteller. You kind of have to be. People learn through stories, and it's said that you do stories where you are kind of the butt of the joke. Is that what's a part of it?
Yeah. So I affectionately say I use self-deprecating humor.
I love it.
So I was speaking in Florida, and this gentleman, I got a standing O, and there was a long line at the book counter, and this gentleman walked up and said, I really like your self-deprecating humor. And I told him that was a shitty thing to say. And then he went, oh, crap. And I said, exactly.
Yep.
So, there's something about when I make fun of myself, you don't get to.
Yeah.
So I typically step on a stage and say, look, I know what you're thinking. How tall is he? I'm 5'19" and a half, vertically gifted, follically challenged. I go to the barber, I say, how about those Seahawks? And 30 seconds later, he says, next.
Yeah.
And I go to give him a tip. He said, no, I couldn't. That'd be stealing. Trim the ears. He means inside. So usually by then they go, oh, this guy's different.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You have that. You have to have that energy, that different energy. People just get bored with the same old.
Right.
They will just turn their brain off, glaze over. And if you start throwing humor and just, making fun of yourself, maybe making fun of a, interesting situation, or just having fun with how you speak, people will find you very interesting and want to learn about you and learn about what you have to say. So
I also use a lot of interaction.
Yeah.
And a lot of brainstorming. So, and I learned a long time ago, when I first started speaking, I used to hand out a 3x5 card afterwards, and I'd ask two simple questions. What did you like most? And what one thing could I improve? And almost always they would say more brainstorming, more interaction. Right. So I started incorporating those things into my presentations. And nobody's ever said, no more brainstorming. We've had too much of that. Nobody says that. So
this is during, so these brainstorming events, they happen during seminars. I'm assuming not speaking events, but seminars.
Well, I do a number of different things. So I do keynotes to large audiences where I'm the opening or closing speaker at a general assembly. I'm the largest group I talk to is 2,500 people.
That's big.
Yeah. And 1,500 people in Istanbul, for example.
Wow.
So that's, but I also do all and half day seminars, and I also do workshops. But cool. I also MC and I facilitate meetings as well. So it's kind of evolved over time.
Sure. I mean, as a speaker, you're more versatile that way. I mean, if you could do a handful of different items and teaching something versus speaking something, you are going to work more. That's for sure.
It's true. And then occasionally somebody say, well, we want you to do the keynote. And I said, great. Well, while I'm there, I can also do a number of other things. Yeah. I can do a breakout workshop. I can do a panel discussion. And so sometimes I end up doing 2 or 3 things in one day, which is good because then I'm basically in front of people, and invariably there's a long line at the book counter when I'm done.
Well, right. And I find that with, if you take time to get to know your audience, I mean, not just on a, hi, I'm up here on stage, you're down there in the audience, we're actually having a one-on-one conversation, a one-on-5 conversation, whatever. They're more likely to look at you as someone to look up to, learn from, maybe buy a book from, have a good relationship with. I'd rather be connected with somebody than not. It's just,
well, and I don't really promote my books from the stage. I'll do one thing. I'll say, everything you want is just outside your comfort zones. I need a volunteer to come up and help me with this next thing. There's usually a long pause, kind of a pregnant pause, and then one intrepid soul jumps up and walks up to the stage, and I just say, hey, I just wanted to give you this book for volunteering. Thanks.
Oh, very cool.
And sometimes they'll do a little role playing, but mostly I'm making a point. And the point is, when I ask that question, some of you look down at your shoes like, I hope if I don't look at him, he won't see me, kind of thing. And now they know I have a book. And that's the extent of my marketing, what I do from the stage, because I don't think I'm there to sell my books, but I always bring them.
Well, they're a tool to use. So, you can't have me, you can't take me home, but you can take my words. So here is a tool to use, a reference what we've learned and talked about today. That's actually, I love that technique. That's pretty great. That's pretty great.
Well, if you do a good job, they want to take you home. I mean, take something from you home. Right?
Yeah. A little memento, if you will. Books are hard to just throw away. They're, if you give them away as gifts, if you, have someone who buys them, and it's a little hard. Like, I can't just toss it out like a pamphlet or a business card. It's a book. You can, you can treasure it. You can look back on it later and use it, refer to it. It's great. It's really hard to get rid of. So it is a great, I use it as a business card, if you will. Check this out. Yeah. You like it? Cool. There's more. We can chit chat and have a conversation.
I asked my publisher, the late great Charlie Jones, how he sold 2 million copies of a book called Life is Tremendous. He said, I gave 200,000 away.
Giving away stuff for free really helps. I've noticed that for myself. I've kind of stopped selling my books, and I've just started, it sounds weird, selling myself in a matter of speaking. I'm helping others like yourself, hey, look at this guy. He's doing really great things. I want you guys to read their books. And in doing so, all of a sudden, people are starting to look over here too. So you're doing for others, you're being charitable. You tend to get that kind of karma wash over. It's unintentional, but it just kind of happens, which is kind of neat. So
people buy you.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you do a good job on the stage, they want to take you home.
Exactly. So
I also have an electronic newsletter that goes out to about 8,000 people, and I usually send a clipboard around for that.
Oh, okay.
I have a podcast as well, and so that's also free on my website. So
yeah. What is your podcast aimed at? Topic wise.
The name of the podcast is Mark Matteson on Books and People.
Mhm.
So I interview authors and I interview interesting people you probably never heard of, but have
Yeah.
done something extraordinary,
Yeah.
like Sylvia Hampel. So I spoke to 500 people in Boise, Idaho about 5 years ago, up above the big blue field. It's
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Nice.
And she came up afterwards and bought all my books and said, "Can I take you to dinner?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Tell me your story." And she said, "I was 28 years old. I had 3 small children. And I had a really good job as an air traffic controller. And my husband walked out on me. And she said I couldn't do my job anymore. So I started cleaning toilets in the neighborhood. And she said, I built the largest woman-owned business in Idaho. I have 500 employees, mostly single moms."
Wow.
And I said, "Sylvia, you have got to write a book." She said, "Yeah, you're the 17th person that's told me that." Well, she's since sold her business. She's in the process of writing a book. And Sylvia's story is amazing.
Yeah.
But you probably never heard of Sylvia Hampel.
No. I'd love to hear more about her. She sounds awesome.
Yeah. So you just go on the website and click Sylvia Hampel. It's a great story.
I'm gonna, yep, and I can even maybe get a hold of her and try to get her to hang out with me a little bit and talk and have her talk a bit about her story a little more. That'd be really cool. I love making more connections. Yeah, I love making connections. It's just I wouldn't have met you without another author was on here, Ron Collier. He referred me to you, and it's a beautiful network. I mean, this whole thing is just a beautiful network. And the more people I talk to, interview, and learn about, it just all it does is elevates, my knowledge, and then our network just gets bigger, and it's just super. It's really neat how it all just kind of interconnects together. We're all trying to help.
It comes from a quote from Charlie Jones that has become my quote now. You'll be the same person in 5 years, except for 2 things: the people you associate with and the books that you read.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So it begs the question: what are you reading and why? And who are you hanging around and why? And is that in alignment with where you want to be in 5 years?
Right.
And so all I've ever done really since I heard that quote was I made sure that the learning that I was doing and the people I was associating with were in alignment with where I wanted to be, which is both good and bad. The good is I get to hang around extraordinary people who are way smarter than me. The bad is sometimes you leave some people behind.
Sure.
Not everybody's going to come with you on this journey.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the facts of life. Unfortunately, it's a tragic thing, but it is a necessary thing at times. If you're willing to grow, other people behind you are not willing to grow, it might just be time to, cut ties and like, I love you, but I have to let you go. Sometimes that's how it goes. It's just matter of life.
It's the law of attraction.
It is. Now you also coach, I hear.
Oh yeah, I have a coach. So the coaching business came out of, I never discussed it. I never offered it. I never said I do personal coaching. A gentleman called me about 10 years ago and said, "So you've written 3 or 4 books?" I said, "I have." He said, "Well, I would like to write a book." So we spent like an hour on the phone and I gave him a bunch of ideas.
Yeah.
He said, "Wow, this is great. Can we do this again?" I said, "Sure." I said, "I don't think it'll be for free," but he said, "No, I wouldn't expect that." I said, "But what would you like to do?" He said, "Well, I'd love to talk to you once a month and then maybe have access in between and you give me homework." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, what would I charge for that?" And he said, "I don't know. I'd pay you $500. I said, "Okay." So I put together an agreement and I have about 10 coaching clients now that I talk to on a regular basis. And every time I think, okay, I can't handle any more, somebody calls out of the blue. And again, I think it's a part of that is people buy you, right? So whether that's someone who wants to launch a speaking career or wants to write a book or just wants to improve their sales, everybody that reaches out to me is different, has a different set of objectives.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's really cool. And I mean, you're gonna be able to, you're prioritizing yourself and helping others, and you're learning and helping others, and then that's just, I think that almost gives yourself a little bit of energy to kind of keep going and adding more. And eventually, as just naturally, the people who you've helped and who are kind of, okay, I'm now walking on my own 2 feet here in this new genre of my life. We're going to still talk and be, coach and coach client, but I don't necessarily need you as much as I did before. And so, then they move on and you get a new set of people who are interested in what you do.
Yeah, you kind of work yourself out of a job in a way.
Kind of, but there's always fresh people who who are hungry to do what you do or do something similar to what you do. So they want to learn from experts and those who have experience doing it. So
I remember I hired Dan Pointer, who wrote 120 books,
Yeah.
I was speaking in Santa Barbara, and I called him and I said, "Hey, I'm in Santa Barbara. I know you're close by somewhere. I got a little time tomorrow morning. Can I buy you breakfast?" And so he said, "Sure." He said, "You want it to be a coaching assistant?" I said, "You bet."
Yeah.
And this was shortly after I was doing coaching, and he said it'd be $500 for an hour. And I said, "Great." And so this guy was so smart. And we talked for 2 hours, and he didn't charge me an extra $5. It was just tremendous value.
Yeah.
So I don't really put a time limit on the time we have. It's typically 60 to 90 minutes, but it just depends on how much we want to get done. The one thing I hear more than anything else is, a friend of mine said this to me one day. He said, "Mark, I love talking to you, but talking to you is a little bit like trying to take a sip of water from a fire hose." He said, if you could just kind of back it off a little bit and just do a quick recap and then just give me one thing to work on. I said, "Okay."
Sure.
So, yeah.
Taking a sip of water from a fire hose. I like
Yeah, that's what he said.
I like that. That means you're still a wealth of knowledge is what that means.
Well, I think I was either a left-handed compliment or a right-handed insult. I wasn't sure which one it was.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how that goes.
Baker's dozen. Sure.
Yeah. We'll figure that out as we go. But that's good. You get that feedback and then you're able to make adjustments. And that's kind of how you handle things from then on. So it's all good feedback. It's all good feedback. Now, so what kind of markets and industries are you? Because do you consult also?
I do.
You're a busy guy.
So I have 3 or 4
guy.
consulting clients where I go out there 2-3 days in a week and go out a couple times a year.
Now, what are you consulting for exactly?
Well, okay, so I started my professional career as an air conditioning technician in 1976. I left college.
Okay.
I was playing basketball on a scholarship, and I had a 3.0 blood alcohol level.
Sure.
So, but I left and I joined the Air Force as an air conditioning refrigeration technician because at the time in the mid 70s, men and women were graduating from college and they couldn't find a job.
Right.
So I wanted to learn a skill. So I was a tech for 10 years. And then the end of my 3rd year of my apprenticeship, I sold more service agreements and projects than the guy they hired full time. So my boss kind of dragged me in the office and said, I need you to be here.
Yeah.
So I sold for about 9 years. And then I remember going to my very first sales training in Pittsburgh. It was 2.5 days, a guy named Dan O'Hara. And I remember having the audacity, because I'd been a tech and now I was a salesperson. And I remember thinking, I want that guy's job. That's what I really want to do, what he's doing. Well, 10 years later, Dan hired me to train all of his salespeople. Oh, funny. And I know. So, that coach, that teacher was always inside me. I talk about that a great deal in that book. Yeah. Old Light Through New Windows. Okay. It's pretty autobiographical. It's a bit of a memoir. So my career just kept evolving. I had kind of a series of chapters, if you will. Yeah. And in each chapter of my life, I rose to the top and then said, okay, what's next? And I kept shifting gears and doing things. And so what I tell people now is I used to change filters and now I do this. God bless America. Yeah, I have a very similar story, but I won't get into that with you today. This is about you, but it is amazing how you go from certain chapters of your life, you take something, you learn from it, and then you take those things, those life lessons, and move on to a different section of your life. You learn more stuff and you take more things and just keep building on that until you develop your dream or life goals in your life. It's incredible what happens. Build an empire or businesses. It's awesome. So to answer your question, I do a lot of work in the mechanical contracting industry. Mm-hmm. Mitsubishi is my sponsor on my podcast. About 60% of the work I do is either in manufacturing, distribution, or with contractors. So the consulting I do, and I'll give you an example. 20 plus years ago, I met a gentleman. I was doing a seminar on sales management, and he asked me if I would consider coming. I was in Boston. He asked me if I'd come down to New Jersey and help him grow his company. He was struggling a little bit. And I said, sure. So I spent a day, and he liked what he heard. So I came out there 2-3 days, a couple times a year. Yeah. And 20 years later, they're doing 60 million. Whew. And, I'm still on retainer. So again, I have 3 or 4 clients like that where I go out for 2-3 days at a time. Okay. And again, that's the consulting. And I don't really talk about that much, but it's just almost everything I do has evolved over time. And when someone says, well, could we do this on a regular basis? The answer is, of course, I'd be happy to. Yeah. So it naturally evolves, which is really, I think, honestly, like the best way. Yeah, it's great to,
aim at something and shoot and go and do your best you can. But sometimes things just kind of fall into place that you don't expect, and they just end up working great for you. So, I mean, use your natural skills. And then, so again, I'm got a lot of information from your bio and reading through that. And I saw something about, publishing as well. You're kind of
Ugly Dog Publishing. In my last 4 books
Ugly
have
Dog
just been me.
Publishing.
Yeah, so I publish my own books now, which is great.
Awesome.
And so put that on the list as well.
Yeah, I'm like, you're kind of a jack of all, which is pretty cool. That's a lot of, but I would say you're not a master of none. It sounds like you're a master of quite a few different avenues.
Well, it's fun because you have control over it. There was a time when, 20 plus years ago, if you wanted to get a book published, you had to submit and get an agent and do all and the world of publishing has changed. So like a lot of other industries, consolidation, now there's just a handful of publishers in New York City. And what Amazon's done is they've leveled the playing field so anyone can become an author.
Yep.
And that's another thing I coach on, is helping people get books published. And the gentleman I work with, his name is Jason Lyler. And he's been indispensable. We've worked together on 8 different projects. So,
okay.
And I think you have to have that. I'm a solo entrepreneur, but I have a host of relationships with people who have very specific skills.
Yeah.
So I leverage those skills and those people to help me kind of do what I do. So
yeah.
And for example, I'll close the speaking engagement, then I'll say to you, the second option will be with books. So if they're interested in having books as well, it'll be just a keynote or the keynote with a surprise. And I'll give you an example. There is a very large wine distributor in the Northwest and Young's Market, and they had me speak to 400 salespeople.
Okay.
And the year before I spoke, we were in the 11th hour, and we were ready to go. And at the last minute, the CEO kind of jumped in and decided they wanted to have somebody else, and they hired Rudy. The football story, right?
Mm.
And so evidently he wasn't well received. And the CEO said, and he was charging for autographs, which alienated a lot of people. It was bad. It didn't go well. And so the next year, Brian, the gentleman who was kind of the VP of sales, said, okay, we're having you this time. And yes, I want to have, 400 copies of Freedom from Fear. I said, great. I said, well, here's what we'll do, Brian. Halfway through my presentation, I'll turn to you and say, Brian, if we were to give everybody a copy of Freedom from Fear, do you think they'd read it? He says, yeah, no, I think they would. I said, okay, great. And so sure enough, halfway through my presentation, I asked the question. He came up on stage. He goes, yes, that'd be great. I said, and by the way, the autographs are free.
Yeah.
And I got a standing ovation. And then I sold a bunch of extra books, on top of that while I was signing books. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the thing, it's all about value, and it's all about delivering information that when you're on a stage and you're presenting, there's 2 skill sets that are necessary. One is having great content, and the other is having platform skills. So one isn't much good without the other. So if you only have platform skills and no content, it's kind of like eating a donut. It's food, but it's not very nutritious.
Right.
If you have great content and no platform skills, it's like eating raw broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for you, but it doesn't go down well.
No.
And so what I had to learn how to do as a public speaker was to make sure that I had both platform skills and content.
Awesome.
And I think when you do that, not only do you get asked back and you get referrals, but the books kind of sell themselves. Going back to what we talked about before.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you mind going through maybe a chapter or so just to kind of get us an idea of what this book is? So let me see.
As we think, so we become.
As we think, so we become. That way, just kind of get an idea of what to expect when they grab it. Because 22 ways to change your thinking in life. That's a lot. That could be a huge amount of topics. I want them to kind of get a taste before
Sure.
they.
Here we go. So this chapter is entitled "Digital Dialogue Debrief."
Okay.
Have you ever seen the 2003 movie Lost in Translation? Bill Murray plays an over-the-hill movie star who's hired to promote a Japanese whiskey in Tokyo. He's paid a princely sum to hawk product he doesn't necessarily believe in or use. They spoil him rotten, putting him in a 5-star hotel, but he's lost his mojo, and it's a bittersweet tale of unrequited love and humor in a clash of cultures. By definition, the title means the inability to understand due to having been poorly translated, as in I tried reading the instruction manual, but many of the steps were unfortunately lost in translation. In this digital world we live in now, things are lost in translation. Why is that? It's simple. 55% of all communication is nonverbal, 38% is extraverbal, and 7% of the words. So when we speak to each other in person, all those elements are in play. But in an email or a text, the nonverbal elements are conspicuously missing.
Mm-hmm.
So what to do? Zoom's helping people, assuming you show your face and you're fully dressed. But more and more people work from home, and when something is gained, something is lost in translation. So what follows are what I call digital dialogue debrief. Simple ways to improve your communication efforts. Number one, speak in the first person. Don't say you or we when you mean I. When I use you, I am in effect shoulding on you. Moreover, I'm not taking personal responsibility for my actions and decisions. And when I use we, it's misleading and manipulative. It's not based on actual survey or consensus. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two is ask questions instead of giving orders. It took me 15 years of marriage to learn this one. My wife has used this to great effect. You feel like going out tonight? She used to say, and I'd say, yeah, okay, sure. Now it's my idea. These days, because I'm hip and aware, it's what I say to her when she asks me that same question is, it sounds like you want to go out tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Education's a beautiful thing. Number three, use tact and diplomacy. Ben Franklin was a master at this. He would listen to another person's position and then say, I could be wrong. I often am. And then state his position. And then he would follow up with, have you ever considered, or what if we were to, or let's look at both sides so we can make an informed decision.
Awesome.
Number four, and we talked about this already, using self-effacing humor, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm telling you that I'm comfortable in my own skin and I'm willing to take interpersonal risks to build rapport and friendships.
Yeah.
And when I make fun of me, you don't get to.
Yeah.
Number five, be quick to admit mistakes. Personal responsibility is taking a beating. It's healing to hear someone say that's in a position of leadership, I dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I sliced in the woods. Please forgive me.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. That was thoughtless. In the future, I'll be more mindful. And by the way, there's a difference between an apology and an amend. An apology says, I'm sorry, without a change in future behavior. That's very different than an amend.
Mm-hmm.
Number six, give a person a fine reputation to live up to. Dale Carnegie talks about a story of Tommy, the troubled kid that a teacher inherited. Tommy, rather than believing what other teachers said of Tommy, the first day of school, she looks him straight in the eye and says, Tommy, I understand you're a natural leader. I'm going to depend on you to make this class the best one in the school. And she reinforced that statement over and over again. And what I told my kids from the time they were young enough to understand, I said, your future's so bright, it burns my eyes. You're going to go so much farther than I ever did in school, sports, and business. And they heard that from me hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And guess what? Now they're in their 30s. They have.
That's great.
And last but not least, praise progress. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise when you see any kind of positive change in other people's behavior. I told you were going to soar with this. Great job on that report. I'm so proud of your progress. One day you'll have my job. Praise pays. And so
Awesome.
Those are simple things. They're not easy, but they're really simple.
Yeah.
And they're human. It's kind of a human relations 101. And if we can take the time to adopt some of those principles and try them out, any of them, really, the result is magnificent.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny is I was listening to all those different ways, and I've thought back to bosses, friends, family who have sometimes naturally do a lot of those already. We have great rapport, great relationships, and there's those who do not use any of those, and relationships can get strained very quickly by poor communication. And that right there is a great example of all it takes is a couple extra steps, maybe some dedication to change your communication style, and you might see some great things.
No, simple, not easy.
In fact, just like a diet, just like getting healthy, it's real simple to eat right and exercise. It's a lot harder to actually do it. A lot harder to do it and make committed about it. So At the end of the day, when you are done with writing, done with speaking, when you're 99 years old, you just can't get out of bed anymore. What are you hoping to people have learned from your books?
That I plucked a thistle and planted a rose where I thought it would grow. That's a quote from Abraham Lincoln.
And then at the end of the day, where can people find all of your books? Where can they find your coaching? Where can they find your consulting? Just you in general. Where can they find you?
Pretty simple. The website is www.sparkingsuccess.net /store or podcast. If you could just go on my website, it's all on there. If you order books from my website, I sign them and I usually throw in some bonus material. If you can also get them on Amazon, of course.
Sure.
My phone number is 206-697-0454. I only have one number. That's it. I'll repeat it. It's 206-697-0454. And of course, the first hour is always free. And last but not least, the easiest way to email me, if that's what you prefer, I'm going to go slow because this is a really long email. I wanted to say something, but in hindsight, I regret having created this one. But it's Mark, M-A-R-K, enjoy the journey, just like it sounds, Matteson, Matteson, @gmail.com.
Excellent.
So it's mark.enjoythejourney.matteson@gmail.com.
Excellent. I will make sure to have all that information in the comments, in the description. So if people see your interview and they want to get a hold of you, they have all that information right there at their fingertips, if they haven't already written it down already. So, but Mark, this has been fantastic. I really have enjoyed talking to you. You have so much great information, and you're doing so much. You're doing so much. It's just, hopefully people will look at this and elevate themselves to what you're doing or to what they want to be doing to, find their best selves. You're a great inspiration. I know I'm inspired to just keep going and keep learning and keep doing it. That's all I can say. This is one reason why I really love what I'm doing with this, because I get to meet more cool people like yourself, just making it happen and living the best life. So thank you so much for taking your time and having a chat with me, because I know you're a busy guy.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Ryan.
You're very
make
welcome.
it a great day unless you have other plans.
Oh no, I try to make every day a great day as long as I can. I try to let the the rain clouds and the shadows bother me, just kind of smile through it, and you'll get through the day. You know what I'm talking about? All right, Mark, thanks a bunch. Everyone, hope you had a great time listening. Go find his books. Maybe you can hear him speak occasionally. That'd be really cool too. Give him a call and have a conversation. Maybe you can learn a thing or two and grow your own business or book. That'd be pretty awesome. All right, guys, have a great time. Stay mighty and keep reading. Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.